We are moving now from the academic, the Academy of Sciences setting to individual university. And we have with us Dr. Christoph Glatz from the Coordination Center for Gender Studies and Equal Opportunities at the University of Graz. So Christoph started as a research assistant at the Institute of Sociology at the University of Graz from 2017 to 2021. During this time, he supported the collection and analysis of Austrian social survey data while focusing his research on the relationship between social sciences and well-being. Since last year, he has been working as a quality controller at the Coordination Center for Gender Studies and Equal Opportunities at the University of Graz, where he is involved in writing reports on equality and developing further measures to reduce inequality at the University of Graz. So, Christoph, please.
Thank you very much for the introduction, Rock, and thank you also for the invitation. I'm very happy to be here. So yes, I have the honor to present to you a little bit the Coordination Center for Gender Studies and Equal Opportunities. So what is this Coordination Center? We are mainly managing the master study of gender studies and also developing and implementing tools and measures to decrease inequality at the University of Graz. Personally, I work in the field of equality monitoring, and I'm here on behalf of Barbara Hay, who is the director of this coordination center. So, what do I want to present to you today? I will first of all give you a little bit of a framework and an insight into the University of Graz, as well as the current state of gender equality at the University of Graz. And then I'm going to continue to tell you about the measures to reduce gender inequality at the University of Graz, as well as the necessary legal framework for this matter, as well as the gender monitoring processes and, the policies to reduce inequality. So, we will start with the University of Graz. At the University of Graz there are about 16,000 students, and it is the second largest university in Austria, as far as I know. Also, there are 4,700 employees, if you look at the head count, so individuals. However, if you look at the full-time equivalents, which is like a 40 hours full-time working position at the university, there are 2,700 employees. So this discrepancy between head count and full-time equivalents is due to the fact that some people are not working full-time, but rather part-time. So therefore, full-time equivalence number, the full-time equivalence number is lower. Overall, about 60% of the employees work in the scientific field, while 40% work in the administrative or general field. So, let me first introduce to you the development regarding gender equality in the field of the students at the University of Graz. So what you see here is the proportion of women, of students at the University of Graz, and you see the proportion of women amongst the first-time admissions in the red. You see the proportion of women amongst students in green, then amongst the graduates in yellow, and among the doctorate graduates in purple. And down on the x-axis, you see the timeline starting from 1970 to 2020. And what we see here is that for the last about 40 years, we have a proportion of women above 50% amongst all of those groups of first-time admissions, students, and graduates. And we are now at a female share of between 60 and 70% amongst students, graduates, and first-time admissions. However, if we look at the doctoral graduates in purple, we see here that the proportion of women fluctuates around 50% for the last 20 years. If we now look at the scientific employees at the University of Graz, we get a slightly different picture right here. So we again see the development of the proportion of women amongst scientific staff based on the headcount in orange, based on the full-time equivalent in light blue, and based on the professors in full-time equivalent on the lowest line here on this graph. And again, we see the development over time from 2000 to 2020-21. And first of all, what we see is, if we focus on the orange line, we see that the scientific staff, based on the headcount that we have in the scientific staff, based on the headcount, a proportion of women slightly above 50%. And we also see that this percentage has increased during the last years. On the other hand, we see that amongst the scientific staff, based on the full-time equivalents, that the proportion of women is a little bit below 50%. So why do we see this discrepancy? This is due to the fact that women are working more often part-time at the University of Graz compared to men. However, based on the scientific staff, we see quite a good picture. But if we now look at different career positions, we see a different picture. So if we look at the professors, at the proportion of women amongst professors, we see that at the moment we are at about 35%, which is quite good, but it's far away from 50%. However, we see that during the last 20 years and longer, we see quite a positive development. So in the year 2000, about 6% of all professors were women, and now we are at 35%. As I said, we have different female shares at different career positions, and this is more nuanced in this graph here as well. So now we see the proportion of women at the University of Graz in the year 2021 at different career positions. So on the left hand, we have, overall we have the proportion of women in yellow and the proportion of men in gray. And on the left side, we see the proportion of women and men amongst bachelor and master graduates, as well as amongst other scientific staff, which are mainly student assistants and external lecturers. And in these categories, so at the low career positions, if we will, you see a proportion of women above 50%. Then in the mid-career positions, which are project staff, university assistants, doctoral graduates, we see gender parity. And then it flips. So on the high career positions, which are tenure track positions, associated professors and professors, we see a proportion of women below 50%. So the University of Graz uses an elaborate policy mix to tackle this problem and to restore equal opportunity. And how does it do it? Well, first of all, we need a proper legal framework to deal with and to set up the policies. And at the University of Graz, the legal framework is basically twofold. So on the one hand, we have the University Act, and well, it's the situation that from 1991, legal requirements concerning equal opportunity, especially gender equality, has been strongly implemented in the Austrian public sector, including universities. The University Act now is a federal law far above the statutes of individual universities, and it stipulates a requirement for the advancement of women and quota for recruitment and promotion. And all universities are obliged by law to establish an equality policy strategy in the form of women's promotion plan and equal opportunity plan. So why do we have two plans at the University of Graz, the women's promotion plan and the equal opportunity plan? Well, mainly due to historic development. So up to the year 2015, the university cared mostly about equal opportunity regarding gender, and from 2015 on, it focused more on equal opportunity regarding other social dimensions and categorizations, and therefore two plans were established, the Women's Promotion Plan and the Equal Opportunity Plan. So the Rectorate and the Senate negotiate and adopt the Women's Promotion Plan, which are binding, which is important for quality assurance. And at the university, we also have two institutions, whereas one is to control and the other one is to design interventions. So we have one of the institutions is the Working Group for Equal Opportunities, which we already heard in the last presentation. And this is the university which is not bound by instructions from the university and has therefore considerable powers, and it is there to control the equality development and potential discrimination. On the other hand, we have the Coordination Center for Gender Studies and Equal Opportunity, and this institution is mainly here to develop policies to reduce inequality, and it is supervised by the Rectorate. So this is one part of the legal framework. The other part is the development plan and the performance agreement. So the development plan is a comprehensive and long-term strategy document between the ministry and the university, and it has certain goals that the university has to reach. And it's a little bit abstract, but we also have the performance agreement, which is building on top of the development plan, which has concrete goals how to reach those goals. So the performance agreement is a public law contract between the university and the state or the ministry. And what's important now is that this performance agreement is the basis for the university's budget. And since it is the basis for the university's budget, there's an incentive to reach those goals in the performance agreement, since there are also sanctions if those goals are not met. And in order to control this, there are certain reporting duties. So let me show you just a little insight into the performance agreements. Amongst others, the performance agreement also includes certain parts of the Austrian university development plans, amongst others that the universities strive for more balanced gender representations at all levels, including management positions, committees, fields of study. The university are also implementing or trying to implement gender competence. So gender competence is to be developed and expanded in structures and processes and strengthened individually among all university staff. And further quality research and research-led teaching also should be included should include the integration of the gender dimension. And the performance agreement also has concrete goals or indicators. So amongst others, this is unfortunately in German, but amongst others, the university tries to reach a proportion of women amongst professors of 36.6%, or in the direction of 36.6% for the years 2023 and 2024, from the beginning, from the current percentage of 34.5%. Yes, so on the right side you also see a schematic representation how this should work out. We have the more abstract development plan, which is made for a 6-year period. Based on this development plan, there's the performance agreement with concrete goals for the universities with a 3-year period. And based on those two formal agreements, the university can also establish certain target agreements for each faculties, and based on those target agreements for each faculties, the faculties are also free to formulate certain goals for academic units, and theoretically, but not really practically, those academic units can also negotiate personal targets. So this is just a potential path to go from those abstract high-level goals down more and more each level to the level of faculties or even on the individual level. So in order to monitor this process, we do have gender monitoring at the University of Graz, and generally Austria has one of the EU's most extensive universities gender monitoring systems, covering women's proportion and the efforts to enhance them. And a conclusive monitoring is essential for an evidence-based discussion on gender equality. So what kind of monitoring reports do we have at the University of Graz? First of all, we have the Intellectual Capital Report. This is a university-wide monitoring with regard to the performance agreement. So it includes various indicators of the University of Graz, including indicators regarding equality and diversity, and it is published yearly. On the other hand, we have a report based on the Women's Promotion Plan and the Equal Opportunity Plan, based on the Universities Act, and this is also published yearly. And third, we also have an elaborate report about gender equality development every 3 to 4 years, which is called Zahlen, Fakten, Analysen, and I also have it here with me. So this is a printed report which we are doing every 3 to 4 years, and it's very elaborate. And this is an element of a permanent awareness-building process, and therefore it is extensively discussed, presented, and covered in the university media. And we also send them out to faculties, and we present them at various occasions, so we can try to spread this information at the University of Graz. So, based on the legal framework and the gender monitoring, what are the actual measures that we have to decrease gender inequality at the University of Graz? I'm going to present you some of those policies and measures, and I'm going to start with the appointment procedure monitoring. So the appointment procedure monitoring focuses on the proportion of women amongst professors, as they are the highest career position at the University of Graz and every university. And since we still see a big discrepancy between gender, between male and female in this category. And first of all, how do you get a professorship in the first place? Well, you get selected by the appointment commission, the Berufungskommission in Deutsch. And first of all, people have to send in an application for this position. Some of those people get invited for a hearing, and from those people who got invited to a hearing, 3 of them get selected for the short list in a ranked order, 1, 2, 3, and based on this short list, there's the appointment for this professorship position. And in this process, we do have reporting duties to the ministry, which is why this process is very transparent. So in this table here, you see, actually this is unfortunately again in German, but on this table you see the proportion of women, which is, okay, you can see this. The proportion of women, it's the FA percentage, and you see the proportion of women amongst the Berufungskommission, which is the appointment commission, amongst the Gutachterinnen, those are the reviewers who are helping in the process, and then you see the proportion of women amongst the Bewerberinnen, the applicants, amongst those people who are invited to the hearing, those who are on the Berufungsvorschlag, which is the shortlist, and those who get appointed, which is Berufung right here. The other thing down beneath those information, this is just derived from the upper information, so it's not that important, but the proportion of women in those areas is the thing that's most important. So, as I have said, we have reporting duties to the ministry, which adds transparency to this appointment procedure. And if we would see that the proportion of women is shrinking from those who send in an application to those who get appointed, then we would have the need to explain why this is the case. But in this case right here, in this example, the proportion of women amongst applications is 28%, and it only decreases slightly to 25% to those who get appointed. So this is one of the tools that we have, which adds transparency. But we also have other tools. So based on the Women's Proportion Plan from the University Act, we are also, there's also a commitment to invite all suitable female applicants to a hearing. So this explains now the high percentage, or even the rise, of the share in the level hearing and shortlist. So as you see, the proportion of women is going from 28% amongst the applications to 43% of those who are invited to the hearing, and to 40% from the shortlist. On the other hand, based on the Women's Promotion Plan, there's the commitment for gender parity in committees. So we try to reach gender parity in the appointment commission and also amongst the reviewers, which also helps to increase the percentage of women amongst professors. So the point that I want to make is there's more than one level of intervention which is necessary to fix this gap between men and women in this case. The combination of government targets and controlling and tools to reach the targets are critical for success. So we now move over to a completely different field of policies, which is education, training and workshops. And the gray is really, really light on those slides, but it doesn't matter. So before, regarding the appointment procedure monitoring, this was a policy and intervention on the structural level. Regarding education, training and workshops, we are now moving on the individual level. So this is a totally different example for our policy mix. And well, since we cannot immediately eliminate the disadvantages that lead to the numerical imbalances between men and women in higher positions, we are working with interventions to compensate for disadvantages for female researchers. So these are classical affirmation action tools. Promotion of female academic staff by training and coaching, delivering both empowerment and skills related to career advancements. So we do have programs for every stage of an academic career to promote and support female scientists and strengthen the career planning of women. We also have, in this matter, we also have a collaboration program between all the universities in Graz, so the Medical University, Technical University, Art University and the University of Graz, where young female scientists from all those universities can come together and join a workshop for them in order to compensate for the disadvantages for female researchers, and where training programs are offered to them to advance in the scientific career. So besides those trainings which are exclusive for women, we also have certain trainings and workshops which are for all staff members at the University of Graz and for all students. And of course we highly encourage all those people to take place in those trainings. So we have training on equality issues, anti-bias awareness, gender-fair teaching methods, didactics, stereotype management, and much more. And further, at the University of Glatz, there's also an onboarding program. So if you start to work at the University of Glatz for a certain period of time, you have to take part in this onboarding program, which includes several workshops on various topics. And amongst others, there's also a workshop regarding equality and diversity at the University of Glatz. And everyone has to take part in this workshop, which lasts at least half a day of training. And it includes not only the research stuff, but also the general administrative stuff. And we now move over to the last point that I want to present. It's gender budgeting. So gender budgeting consists of reorganizing, improving, developing, and evaluating budget policy processes with the goal to promote gender equality. And this last point is actually disguised as 3 points, as we have 3 policies that I would like to introduce to you, that I want to show you. And the first one is the incentive system at the University of Glatz. What is the incentive system? Well, here we have a complicated and big table. And what you see here are the academic units at the University of Glatz. So for example, theology, law, business, economics, sociology, and so on. And for each of those academic units, we do know the proportion of women amongst the first semester students, amongst the mid-level academic positions, and amongst the high-level academic positions. And as I've shown to you before, we do have a leaky pipeline phenomenon, so that the proportion of women is shrinking the higher the career position we have. And now we have this we see this for every single academic unit, and based on those information, we calculate certain indicators. So first of all, we have the entry opportunity indicator, and this is just the relation between the proportion of women in the first semester students to the proportion of women in mid-level academic positions. So if we look at the academic unit of law, for example, this is the second from the top, we see that amongst the first semester students, the proportion of women is 62%, and amongst mid-level academic positions, it's 60%. So it's pretty close to each other, and therefore we have an entry opportunity index of 0.97. If it would be completely the same, then we would have an entry opportunity index of 1. And the further the proportion of women is shrinking, the lower the index is getting. So the entry opportunity index is the relation between first semester students and mid-level academic positions regarding proportion of women, and the promotion opportunity index is now the relation regarding mid-level academic positions and high-level academic positions. If we look at the academic unit law again, we see that amongst the mid-level academic positions, we have a proportion of women of 60%, and amongst the high-level academic positions, we have a proportion of women of 40%. So we see a stark decline in the proportion of women, and therefore the promotion opportunity index is also quite low with 0.67%. Not percent, sorry, 0.67. So based on those 2 indicators, we calculate a general index, and for this general index, we actually do weight the promotion opportunity index more, since we care a bit more regarding the proportion of women development between mid-level academic positions and high-level academic positions. So this index is weighted more than the entry opportunity index, but generally then you get the general index. and based on the general index you can compare different academic units regarding the career opportunities for women in the respective academic unit. And we are calculating this table every year, and every year there's a ceremony where the top 3 academic units with regard to this general index are awarded a certain prize. So every year we have to give away, I think, 12,000 euros at the moment. So this is shared for the top 3, for the first, the second, and the third. So first of all, of course, there's a small financial incentive for those academic units to increase the chances of women in the career path. And also there's a symbolic incentive since there's an award ceremony taking place every year. So we now move over from the incentive system to the pay gap radar. And the pay gap radar is with regard to the gender pay gap at the University of Glatz. So the gender pay gap is basically the comparison between the salary of men compared to the salary of women if all other things are equal. So if we compare a man who works 40 hours and a woman who works 40 hours, then the gender pay gap would show us if they earn the same money or not. And at the University of Graz, the gender pay gap actually looks quite good. So in the general administrative staff, we have a gender pay gap of 100%, which means that on average, men and women earn the same salary in the general administrative staff. If we look now at the scientific staff, we also see quite a good value. We see that in the scientific staff, female scientific employees earn 98% of the salary of male in this field. However, and again, if we look at different career positions, we do see differences. And again, in the highest career position, so amongst professors, we actually do see a certain gender pay gap. So we do have different categories of professors now at the University of Graz due to historic development and due to administrative things. And what we see here is that the gender pay gap amongst professors is varying between 85% and 100%. So in order to reduce this gender pay gap in this category of professors, we introduced the pay gap radar. And it works as following. If people are in the appointment process for a professorship, so if they want to get hired as a professor and the university wants them in this position as a professor, then there's a negotiation for various things, amongst others regarding the salary that they would get if they get this position as a professor. And if this salary, if there's an offer of the salary, based on this offer, you can immediately see how this offer would change the gender pay gap in the respective category. So therefore, it adds transparency to this process. And therefore, it allows to determine at a first glance how an offered salary affects the gender pay gap in the respective category. And due to this increase of transparency, we hope to reduce this gender pay gap amongst professors. So at the end, I'm also going to introduce to you a scholarship program from us. And this is now a little bit off topic, since it is not directly regarding reducing inequality. So this scholarship that I want to introduce is the Elizabeth List Scholarship, and it is yearly awarded since 2019, and it is a collaboration project with focus on gender studies. So the scholarship is for certain project teams which consists of 4 members. So we do have 2 senior fellows, although 1 senior fellow has to be at the University of Graz, an internal senior fellow, and 1 external senior fellow. And we also have two junior fellows. Those junior fellows have to be in a PhD program, and one of those junior fellows again should have to be internal at the University of Graz and one external from anywhere else. So therefore, it does provide very good networking opportunities for those young talents in the scientific field. It's a promotion of young talent, and it strengthens gender studies in different research areas, since this scholarship focuses on projects, on submissions with a clear focus on gender studies. And the scholarship also includes this scholarship includes 4 months of 40 hours for incoming senior fellows, 8 months of 30 hours for incoming junior fellows, 12 to 15 months of 30 hours for junior fellows in a PhD program, and an additional budget of 12,000 euros. So as you can see, it's quite a good, it's quite a big scholarship, and you get quite good funding if, in this scholarship. So yeah, right here we have some further information, and I'm coming to the end of my presentation. So there's a website for the Coordination Center for Gender Studies and Equal Opportunities, the website of the Office of the Working Group for Equal Opportunities, so the second institution at the University of Graz, and also we have a toolbox gender platform. So all of those coordination centers in Austria, so every university has one of those coordination centers usually, and they are all collaborating in this gender platform together. Right, and on the right side, on the bottom, you see data warehouse from the Austrian public universities, where you can find a lot of data and indicators and numbers regarding all different information of the universities, amongst others regarding the topic of equality. So thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you, Christoph, so much for such an extensive description of the activities that you have. We have now 15 minutes for a discussion, and if anybody, yes.
Thanks for the nice presentation. I'm Simona Golic-Gadodolnik from National Institute of Chemistry in Slovenia. I have a question. If you study the reasons why the percentage of women is so low at higher position with respect to the lower positions, even in last years, do you know what are the reasons?
Well, first of all, let me tell you that this is not only a phenomenon that we see at the University of Graz. This is this leaky pipeline phenomenon you can see everywhere.
We have the same phenomena, but we wonder what are the main reasons for this. We did not give any questionnaire. I mean, how to study this? I mean, how to find the reasons? What are the main reasons?
Well, first of all, let me tell you, I'm working now for 1 year in this role that I'm at, so I wouldn't consider myself as a completely expert regarding this. But what I've seen, what we've also seen from, for example, interviews that were conducted a few years ago in the research field, we saw that, well, childcare and birth, that those are the things that are usually associated with women in scientific positions. So there's kind of an implicit assumption that this would be an additional work for women compared to men. So I would say it's gotten obviously better over the time, and we also have at the University of Graz institutions, UniKit, UniCare, that try to help as much as possible with this topic, but it seems to be still more related to women in the narrative, although it doesn't really have to.
So this means that women have less time for the research as men, and they are not so they cannot compete then for higher positions.
Yeah, I would say the main problem is the implicit assumption that a female would have to use more of their time for child care and care work in general. So, although it doesn't really have to be, so there's no reason why a man shouldn't stay home for a year.
So what you want to say is that this is a social expectation that women are the main caregivers in a family.
Yeah.
Yeah. Just for a comparison, in Slovenian case, I looked at the data that you presented for University of Graz, and they are very comparable to what we have on national level in Slovenia. So this scissor diagram, where the percentages switch after the PhD level is comparable to Slovenian case, which is shrinking over the time, but what you showed is not significantly different. I don't know about other institutions, we didn't have any national level survey, but the survey that we did in Research Center of Slovenian Academy showed that the main reason that people associate with why women do not achieve the highest position or are discriminated in achieving the highest position is the reason is that the system is putting such requirements for promotion that there is ingrained bias within the requirements. So certain requirements are simply harder for women to attain because they require more travel away from home or more competitive positions or more networking for instance, mentoring positions, which are not freely given away. So in Slovenian context, the childcare is not the main reason, though it is also mentioned that there is higher expectation for women to just spend more time in housework and care work. But this is not the main. It's an interesting, maybe it's historical comparison.
Okay, thank you.
Can I just follow up on this, because we also conducted a quite similar research, and it was on the EU level, and actually what you referred to, the mobility, this was one of the main answers, that females were offered high positions but not in the country where they were living, so then the families did not, seemed not to be so willing to travel, to move with a female for this high position, which was completely not the case for male researchers.
Yes.
So it might also be that actually females as spouses, as partners, are more flexible and mobile and more willing to move abroad. So this was one of the findings, and this, all data from this research is also uploaded to the website. So this I will also I will just
Just one clarification. So women were willing to move, but their families were not.
Yes.
This is
yes,
basically
yes, absolutely. So the female researchers would consider this position, but then the obstacles were actually the partners and the families that were not so flexible in traveling, but also because what we've seen and what we've analyzed, we're just working on a paper, that it's also related to the fact that when a male researcher was offered a higher position, his spouse or partner was actually not having such a high salary. So this would be then much easier to mitigate. And this was not the case when a female researcher was being offered this high position abroad, because then the partner was also having a very stable, very well-paid position.
Yeah. So the overall
the overall budget is not. But there.
Yes.
I also put it down, and I will also send the link, because the data, the food data, we have anonymized everything, and the data set is huge, because this was one of the biggest research done in studies on, it was on research integrity, but many other additional questions too. So we will be also very much willing for the community to use it.
Thank you so much. So I'm not familiar that any such research have been done in Slovenia. As I said, this is something that we were not targeting in our research at ZRC SAZU, but came out as one of the factors. However, Milica Antić-Gaber, who just left the room, she made research of women in politics. And what her research has shown is that when women were offered ambassador position, they would either choose whether to travel. They would choose to travel when they were not needed at home because their families in percentages would not follow them compared to men who, when been given ambassador position, then it was the whole family by definition moving abroad. And I think this is not. This would be common in many different professional fields, not just academia and politics, that women's mobility is not supported in equal measure. But connected to gathering data, does University of Graz or your unit, your office, has some system of regular conducting surveys among the employees about their satisfaction, perception of gender equality? How often do you organize it? Do you compare it over time?
Well, we do have a lot of data regarding like objective indicators, proportion of women in various fields and positions. Regarding subjective data, with regard to this topic, we don't have a regular survey going on. We have irregular surveys. So 10 years ago, we established one survey where this was one topic amongst others. And right now in this year, we also conducting this survey, but this is not on a regular basis at the moment.
Okay, thank you. Any question further? Regarding your office, where you work, so it's a coordination center for equal opportunities and gender studies. From the description you described, it sounds like a combination of administrative office in charge of gender equality or equal opportunities and gender studies scholars doing gender studies research and teaching at the MA level. So how this function, how many people are they, head count and FTE?
Yeah, we are not really doing the teaching for itself, but we are organizing and administrating the teaching. So we are managing the master study of gender studies, and for this role we are organizing the curricula, and we try to find those courses which we offer in the curricula, and we also hire external lecturers who are conducting some of those courses. But we are a team of 7 people in the coordination center, and we are doing the managing and administrative stuff. And also regarding, well, besides this master study of gender studies, we are doing a lot of coordination work and managing those workshops and trainings that I've mentioned before that are for young female scientific employees as well as for general staff and students.
So the gender studies department, does it exist at University of Graz or as a separate unit like history department or economics?
No, so the gender studies, so we have different faculties, but gender studies is not in any of those faculties. So
gender scholars are dispersed around and you are
yes.
putting them together when compiling curriculum for MA studies.
Right.
Okay. This might be an interesting solution in case when somebody is thinking whether to organize a gender studies department or maybe rather have gender scholars in different other scientific fields. This brings me to another question, and that is inclusion of gender dimension into research. So, do you, as a coordination center, provide training for researchers who would be interested in this? Also, we know that FOF is requiring it as part of application process to include gender dimension. So, do you provide training on this topic?
Unfortunately, I also have to answer. I'm not sure. I don't think so, but I'm also not sure. But generally, since gender studies is not in a faculty and not one academic unit, there's also always we also have the goal, and we try to establish gender studies on the professors that we have at the university. So we have some, what's it called? So some professors have, in their contract, based on their contract, part of their time is based on research in gender studies. But we don't have, but those are some positions, and they have like, I think 50% or 30% of their time is based on gender research.
So it would be, for instance, literary history and women's intellectual history.
But as far as I know, this is always like a small fight, so not in an aggressive way.
Yes.
We try to increase this percentage so we try to increase gender studies at the University of Graz by increasing the headcount of potential people who are researching in this field, and also those percentages of the professor positions regarding this topic.
Thank you. Any further question? If not, then I think we are moving to the final presentation, and thank you so much.